right, let's stay with the creative economy, and this time we're going to talk numbers as well as its contribution to the Nigerian economy. As at the last GDP numbers we saw, it grew at about from 45 to about 60-something%, an increase of about 15%, but its contribution to the GDP is still marginal. It's about 0.2. So now we have Ministry of Creative Economy, Art, Culture, Tourism, and Creative Economy. And we have joining us on the program the Special Assistant to the President on Creativity, Baba Agba, joins us in Lagos. I almost say Abuja because all of you are always in Abuja. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
So what do you tell the President about the industry?
I mean, the creative industry is one of the very key and pivotal industries for the country, and I think just generally economically. But I think it's something that is not usually appreciated. So we have the view that creativity, the creative economy is a key driver. We're in the decade of storytelling. It's a real point we can use to create jobs quick and deliver jobs quick, deliver economic growth. I know you started off with the contribution numbers, but not quite correct. But
no, it's correct. It's data. So you can't say
what I mean is
not.
What I mean is not quite correct. It depends. So we'll go into the semantics of where the data is coming from. But one thing we generally
you are the government. You work for the government. You can't be debating MBS number with me on TV.
Finish. So no, not debating. So we're working with MBS because, like I said, one of the first things we did is to say what's the creative economy and fully establish. So we worked that out with them, looking at the international comparables and how all that's calculated. So there will be a rebasing of that because there are a lot of creative activities that are captured in other sectors just because they overlap.
So, I totally agree with that because that rebasing, we've been waiting for it for a very long time. We know that the sector has a lot of potential and is doing a lot. But before I hand over to my colleague to ask other questions, the reason I asked the question about what are you telling the President is because of your special advisor to the President. In terms of the urgency we need if we really want to scale. Because, for instance, when you look at the GDP numbers, the non-oil sector contributed 95%. Oil sector contributed 5%. But oil is our biggest cash cow. That simply means, in terms of the economics, it simply means that value addition is very minimal. Few people are employed because we just carry crude and go out. Thank God for the backward integration. But the potential to scale, keep the jobs here, make the money here, is also within the creative economy. So that should push some sense of urgency. Is the government pushing that sense of urgency from where you sit?
Yes, so coming in, what we looked at. So I work directly with the minister in terms of putting out the strategy and what we're doing. So what we've sort of done is create a strategic roadmap because it was like you're coming in ground zero, like you said, there's a lot of potential, but what's really happening? Where's everything? There's a lot that's happening under the table, in the shadow, let's say in the shadow economy. So looking at what's on ground, looking at baseline countries, benchmark countries, what are they doing? What's the contribution like? How have they gone around developing this? So whether you're talking about South Korea, what's going on in the Middle East, what's happening in more established markets like in Europe, let's say Germany, France, the UK, look at the US, and then say, okay, how does that compare to what we have? And then what's the best way forward? So without being able to develop a strategic framework, working with, the best people globally that have done this, EY, McKinsey, BCG. And so, that's been adopted at the, federal level. President's okayed that. VP actually launched it last year. And so we've been going through different phases of implementation. So you first look at the policy side, you look at the regulatory and the legislative side. So what's the sort of governance structure like? You look at the infrastructure side of it, the infrastructure stock, you look at the talent base, the capacity base. So we have a lot of talent, but how you put in this talent in a way that they can be the most productive they can be, then financing. What are you doing for that? So 23rd of October, the President's approved for us to set up the Creative Economic Development Fund, which is meant to be debt, quasi-debt equity, but it's a financing platform and structure for the industry. And, Afrexim Bank has committed $200 million to that. But, there's other stuff going on in the policy.
They've committed or they are pledging?
They've committed to it. Okay. So now we're setting up that structure and then the funds can come in there. So on the IP side, we had the stakeholder validation for the IP policy. That was in October. So just finalizing to go to effect so it gets approved. But that would then set the framework for how we really look at intellectual properties. And like I said, it's a decade of ideas, right? Intellectual properties and ideas rule the world. Look at every developed economy. And so because we're in the sort of creative economy, it's more copyright, but intellectual property is copyright, industrial property, geographical indicators. There's a whole bunch of other things that cut across about 8 or 7 ministries, so health, agri, tech. But the point is, Nigerians are gifted, they have a lot of ideas, and we have to give them the platform to be able to monetize them. So, but for you to do that, you have to tweak the marketplace, right? Get the economics right, that opens up the enabling environment and gives them, the runway for them to do what they need to do.
Okay, so tell us more about this framework that is being developed for professionals within the creative economy to have access this Creative Economic Development Fund and the IP monetization. And this question is important because there have been other funds in the past for some sectors of the economy, but they failed. They never saw the light of day. So what is being put on ground to ensure sustainability? And perhaps you could tell us more about this framework for this seed fund. Yeah,
so if we go into a bit of the history, I think there's been, let's say, from a large overview perspective, let's say 2 federal funds looking at the industry largely. You have the National Endowment for the Arts, which was actually, the law was passed, the act was passed in November 1991, but was never activated. So that one's in one corner. And then the second side is you had the Nolly Fund, but then that was just looking at the film sector, and that was about 10 plus years ago, probably about $40 million worth. But what we looking at it, what's different from what we're doing is that you had a fund, but you didn't really have a proper structure or institution set up for how to manage the fund, disperse the fund, and key into the National Development Plan. So with this, what we're doing is setting it up properly to say money's coming in, how do people need money? And you're probably referring to the other funds by other organizations like Afrexim and the rest globally. But what we have to look at is creative industry is a very unique space. Money is there, fine. But how does that money need to come into the industry for the industry to be able to access it? So is it for infrastructure? The people playing in infrastructure have a different way and a different procedure of how their business goes, and they can move in a different direction. The people doing content, it's a completely different beast. So you almost have to have this specially curated. So think of it almost like a creatives bank in a sense, where now this is specially being designed for creatives using the experience. So personally, I'm a filmmaker. I'm a photographer, cinematographer, producer, so I've interacted with all these financial houses when they've always called and spoken with stakeholders, and you always had these bottlenecks of things like, what's the guarantee structure, like how you be able to underwrite the money, collateral, and it's fine, you have something that's interesting, but then, you also have the marketplace issue where, they're asking you for like a sales or pre-sales agreement or like a distributor commitment, a minimum guarantee from a distributor, and all these things.
So are all those details clear now?
Yeah, so that's part of what we're factoring in. So what you mentioned, for instance, the IP monetization, because for us, that's what we have as value. So how do we create that structure where IP can be monetized, IP has value, IP can be your collateral. So creatives can come with their ideas, put it together, show them how they can put it in the framework.
So for context, IP is intellectual property.
Yes, intellectual property. Exactly. For every general framework, we'll be using it. So because that's the main thing, because that's what creatives trading. We don't, we create ideas. Other people might have physical assets, but we have these concepts and ideas that have value and that can be monetized.
It's interesting to see that you're trying to convert this to a sellable commodity, if you will, if it's more like something that we can buy into. Because I saw some of those documents that said, this is pretty ambitious if I have to put my money in this. And some of us will dare to put our money at some point and see how it works, just to give the system a chance. But in closing, how much of the buy-in and education are you bringing to the people that are really practicing? You and I can understand all this sophisticated conversation, but the practitioners down the line, not everyone may be, perhaps those above, because by the end of the day, it's an industry that everybody needs to have a seat on the table.
So it's a very interesting one. So obviously creative industries is massive. We have a lot of agencies and a lot of heads for the different agencies, and thankfully, almost pretty much everybody's from the industry. So we always have regular engagements at the ministry level, at the agency level, and communicate these things. A lot of them have also been part of developing these things, these structures. So we've had a lot of stakeholder engagements, maybe not the big massive town hall type ones you see, but more like working sessions, and that's always been going on rolling. And I hear you that a lot of people might not be able to get it, might not be able to key into it, but that's where, let me say, on the design side, for the consumer-facing side, it has to be really distilled in a way that people can go in, and also for us to structure how it goes. Because are you going to have a situation where every single filmmaker is trying to key into it, or a situation where there are sort of clusters and the clusters key into it and then it trickles down? So there are different models we're playing with. All right,
we wish you guys the very best. We're going to be looking at and be reporting.
We're going to come back to him.
We're going to come back to
how it's being executed.
Yes, at the end of the day.
I look forward to coming back.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, when I saw the model, it's more like what they do for startups, where you can also keep your own stake.
Yeah.
While investors are coming in without you losing your stake because some investors coming in. I've read some of the documents. It's ambitious, we must say. But Clem Agba, special advisor to the president on Clem. Baba Agba.
Well, I'm also Clem Agba.
I brought your father into the conversation. Yeah. Baba Agba, my friend. My
apologies. Agba is a big family, right?
Yeah. No, it doesn't want to say.
It doesn't want to
Baba Agba, special advisor to the president on creativity. Thank you so much for coming.
All right, thank you.
And that's it on the program, the weekend edition. Thank you so much for your time and company. Top on the hour is Sunrise Daily. I'm Jeffrey Uzongo. Bye-bye.
Of course, so many things are still developing and we're following them for you. Thank you for watching. Have a blessed weekend. I am Bukola Kuka. Bye for now.